Well, hello everyone. So we'll do this, I hope to do it every week for a long time. We'll see how long this can continue. And we'll read from the Rays of the One Light, and I'll speak for about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. And the last 5-10 minutes I'll take questions. So if during the course of this little discourse you come up with any questions, please type them in. If you have any questions right now, already in your mind, feel free to ask, that I would love to serve you in this way. So, this is week 45. Faith is a call to prayer. Prayer is a call to faith. And so, from the Gospel of St. Matthew, in chapter 7 and in chapters 21, we read, "Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Verily I say unto you, if you have faith, and doubt not, if ye shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things, whatsoever ye ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive." Paramahansa Yogananda showed by his own example that prayer is a power, provided we believe deeply in that power. When our thoughts and feelings are strongly focused and then united in growing awareness to the divine presence within, they can bring even seemingly unrealistic wishes to fulfillment. When Paramahansa Yogananda was in charge of his school in Ranchi, India, he took the boys on occasional outings to the surrounding countryside. "There was a waterfall not far away," he told Swami Kriyananda, "where I took them sometimes. It was dangerous to cross there. But I would cry out to the boys, 'Do you believe in God?' 'Yes,' they would shout back enthusiastically. And so we always crossed in safety." Years later, after I'd gone to America, one of the teachers tried to do the same thing, but he lacked spiritual power. One of the boys slipped on a rock and was drowned. Thus, the master explained, belief alone is not enough. It must be united to one-pointed awareness, which leads to self-realization. And now the Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter underscores the necessity for such one-pointed concentration. Whenever the mind, fickle and restless, wanders off from its concentration, let the meditating yogi withdraw it resolutely, spurning every distraction, no matter how alluring, and bring it back again and again under the control of the self. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. So we'll be talking about prayer. And the first thing is we need to contemplate, what is it that we are praying for? That Swami Kriyananda had two principles for himself. He had many principles, but in regards to his own self. And that was that he would never pray for himself, and that he would never defend himself. So if someone accused him of doing something and he didn't do it, he just wouldn't say anything about it. And truth can always get tricky, so I don't want to go into that second one. But I do want to go into the fact that he would never pray for himself. That he saw everything that came to him as coming from Divine Mother, even the negative things. And of course this is a very difficult state to achieve, but we must try. We must start now and try to achieve this state of even-mindedness and calmness, to where we feel that no matter what's going on the outside, that on the inside we're ever peaceful. Because this outer world, it will constantly go up and down, constantly. So that's the first point about prayer is, and if you feel that you want to pray for yourself, well, it's all right. In fact, why don't you ask the monks to pray for you instead? That we are restarting our prayer group, and all of the monks will be praying for others. So most of you watching this evening, you can write to me and I will forward it to the appropriate monk who's taking care of these things. Now, prayer. Prayer, what is it? Paramahansa Yogananda would say that prayer is talking to God, and then meditation is listening to God. But really, when most of us talk, when we talk to God, our prayers, they're not concentrated. That our minds are scattered, that we think, I want this thing, oh God, and I want that, and that. And while you're at it, God, do you think you could give me this and maybe a little of that? And the poor man, God, we confuse him. That we have so many different desires and we're asking for so many different things. that we need to learn how to still our mind and to ask for things one-pointedly. And if we can ask for things only for others, God is more likely to grant those prayers. Also, when we pray, we should add at the end of the prayer that if it is thy will, God, because ultimately that we want everything to be in tune with God's will. And this reminds me of a story. That Paramahansa Yoganandaji, when he was establishing his headquarters in Los Angeles, California, he found a large estate with a large building, maybe multiple buildings at that time, I don't know. And he just felt that God was telling him this was the place that they needed. And it was very difficult for him to raise the money, and he very much needed to raise a large sum of money in 3 months. And one person told him, there's no way you could raise that amount of money in 3 months, it'll take you 3 years. And Master said, 3 years for those who think 3 years, and 3 months for those who think 3 months. I might be wrong on the little details of this story, but now here's the interesting part. One of the Nayaswamis, Nayaswami Dharmadas, that he asked Swamiji, Swamiji, how far could you take that? Could you say 3 weeks for those who think 3 weeks, 3 days for those who think 3 days, 3 hours for those who think 3 hours? I mean, he was a master. Why couldn't he just materialize the money in 3 seconds? And Swami Kriyananda's answer to that was no, that your will must also be in tune, in harmony with the divine plan. And that's a very, very important aspect of prayer. That yes, we do seem to have our own free will in the beginning, but constantly we're trying to attune our will to God's will. And we can't just sit around and do nothing and hope that God does it, that we also have to do it. And I often see this as a play, as a dance even with God. And I remember Swamiji's song, hand in hand, we're dancing together. That we must dance together, that we must do it with God. And so we must pray with God also. Now, this reading said that if you pray believing that you can become strong enough to say to that mountain, move, and it will be cast into the sea. And in the beginning we think, that just sounds inconceivable, that we don't have that kind of power and we don't have that kind of faith. And so what we have to do is pray with little things. And we have to ask God to do little things for other people or for other situations. You know, once Master was giving a talk and he said, I desire for, I don't know what it was. And then he added, but that's not a personal desire. It's a desire for the organization, because he had no desires. But I want to get back to that point of that we have to have that faith, and so we have to build it slowly by praying for things for the organization, praying for a friend. And then when we see that that prayer has been granted, that we'll start to develop this relationship with God, that we'll feel God, that He's with us. And then we'll know that He wants to do good in this world, but He needs us. That God only works through channels. And He can only work high things, like moving mountains, through channels that are ready to receive that kind of power, through channels that have that kind of focus. So we need to build ourselves in small ways. We need to learn how to focus our mind so intently that then it will gain a certain power. And without that focus, we won't have the power. And then it will seem like our prayers aren't being answered and like God's not listening. I want to tell you a small instance that happened to me, that I have a friend, and I had communicated with this friend maybe once. She had sent an email in the 14 years that I'd been with Ananda. I don't remember how many years ago that was, but the point was I had not communicated with this person for several years. And as many of you know, I spent some time in seclusion, and during that time in seclusion, I felt deeply to pray for this person, deeply. And I prayed and prayed deeply. And then a few days later, an email showed up in my inbox from that person. And it just confirmed to me the power of prayer. That no way, after you don't talk to someone for several years, and then you pray deeply for that person, does an email just end up in your inbox and you can call it coincidence. That it certainly made me realize the power of prayer. And it also scared me a little bit, to be honest with you. That I realized that I must learn to control my mind. That our minds do have power, and that our thoughts do have power. And when we learn that, and when we learn to only start to think of good things, and when we learn to only start to think of things that are beneficial for others, then our thoughts will gain even more power. And in time we have to become very careful of that. It's the same thing as saying that we want to learn to become masters of ourselves, that we want to learn how to control our energy, that we want to learn how to control our consciousness. And that's what we're here doing. And my voice is getting a little serious. It doesn't have to be so serious. That the path is joy. And as we grow, as we go further and further on the path, that it only becomes more and more joyful. And so, even learning to pray with faith, that the whole thing needs to be done with joy. That if we pray with a grumpy attitude, that He's watching our attitude, He's watching our thoughts, He's always there. We may think that we can dissemble, I learned that word from Swami Kriyanandaji, that we can lie in front of other people and, say one thing while we're thinking another thing. But in front of God, we can't do that. That He knows our most intimate feelings. He knows our most intimate thoughts. And so the game here is for us to get our thoughts together, for us to get our consciousness together, to be thinking peaceful and happy things. Now, another thing that was mentioned here is that the difference I want to talk about between faith and belief. And I won't go into semantics that I don't even remember the difference between the actual words, and it doesn't matter. But what we need to understand is that one of those words means that we have experience behind it, that we have prayed deeply and our prayers have been granted, and that we even know that it was the fact that we prayed, that it was cause and effect, was the thing that made, let's say, that person get well. That you could pray for your next door neighbor and hope that they get well tomorrow, and they could get well tomorrow, but do you really know that it was your prayer that did it? Or were they going to get well anyways? And you could pray for your next door neighbor tomorrow for them to get well, and they don't get well at all. And then you start to disbelieve in God. That we have to understand how this subtle power works. It is a very subtle power, and it has to do deeply with magnetism, and I probably shouldn't go too deeply into magnetism, but the essence is, let's say that you have someone right in front of you that you want to heal by the power of your mind, by sending healing vibrations. That person has to be convinced that you have the power to heal them. That person has to be convinced that you know what you're doing. And if you radiate that level of knowledge, of ability, that you can heal with your words, that you can heal with the power of Om, and you convince that person's mind, then they will be healed. But now, it's not you who's doing it. That you will know that God is the one who's doing it. And if you feel tempted that you're the doer, that it will decrease your healing power. That you have to know that God is the one doing. And in that, you convince the person of God within themselves, who is ultimately, that person is healing themselves by the power of God within them. You are just raising that latent force that is already dormant within them. That you are reconvincing that person that he himself is a God, but he's a God who has fallen asleep. That all of us are gods. That each one of us has the power of Ram. You have the power of Krishna within you. But that power is latent. That power is locked up. It's locked up in your desires. It's locked up in your thoughts that go hither, thither. And know that your desires and your thoughts, that they are intimately linked. And that when you have a wrong desire, then thoughts, like a whirlpool around that desire, will swirl around that desire. And so we practice all of the spiritual techniques that we do in order to get rid of wrong desires, so that we can have pure desires. You know, the scriptures say we all, well, I was going to say we all love to talk philosophy, but maybe that's not true. Some people say, yuck, philosophy, when they hear about it. But that the philosophy says that, oh, it's only a dream, and that I just won't take this dream real. But we don't just escape by mere philosophy. That first we have to have a good dream, and we have to have a power to make a good dream, and make this a wonderful world for all of those around us, and live in a space of harmony and peace and light. And once we live in a good dream, and we realize the power of how to do that, and that does mean this power of prayer, the power of the mind, the power of letting God flow through us, with us, cooperating with us. Once we learn how to have a good dream, then we can learn how to awake from the dream and realize that it was all just a dream. That Master says, when you know you are only a dream, as I know that I am a dream. I forget the rest of that quote, but even those, it's just wonderful words for us to understand that this all is just a dream. It's not for us to take so seriously. But when the emotions, when they get excited, and we're huffing and puffing, and we just say, I can't believe this happened and that happened, then we can't see clearly at all that this is just a dream. But when we get calm, when we get still, then we can know, oh yeah, it's not that important. And when we back up and just get a little perspective on things, then we see, oh, that thing that happened 3 years ago, it's not so important. And don't be one of these psychological antiques that remembers the bad thing that happened 20 years ago and still playing it over and over again in your mind, thinking that it happened yesterday. That forget the past and don't worry too much about the future. That just try to keep your mind on God. And it's hard to keep our mind on God. Keep your heart on God. That constantly try to develop devotion. Constantly whisper in your soul, are you there, God? Are you with me? Are you here right now, God, that I only want to love you, God? I only want to please you, God. Show me what to do, God. And if you have that little child-like relationship with God, He'll take care of all the details. You'll begin to feel His presence. And then your prayers will begin to have this power. And so Swamiji ended this little section that he wrote in the Rays of the One Light with a quote from the Gita. And that quote says, as often as your restless mind gets pulled outward and outward again into delusion, withdraw your mind back into your own center. And you know, Kriya gives us the power to withdraw our mind back into our own center. That you can visualize each one of your thoughts as a ray going out, a ray of electricity with a magnetic field around that ray of electricity. So if you desire a new car, and I hope that you don't, if you desire a new car, you can imagine that a thought goes out and that magnetic ray goes out towards it. And with Kriya, we're going up and down the spine and we're turning ourselves into a powerful enough magnet to withdraw that magnetic field that the car is calling. It's like the car is calling us through magnetism. But through pranayama, we can withdraw that magnetism and offer back every little desire back up to the spiritual eye, into this point of oneness. And you can even do this with Hong Sa, that you can even just, I want to use Master's words, they're powerful, dim it away from there. Dim your concentration, dim your mind away from the hustle and bustle of these five senses. That when you sit to meditate and you hear your neighbors out there doing God knows what, you think, oh, if only I had my earplugs today. Or, oh, maybe I should go knock on their door and tell them, can you just keep it down a little bit? I'm trying to meditate. It will never work. That you have to learn how to withdraw your energy, just like the tortoise withdraws his limbs, and just dim it away. This word, dim it away from there, is very important because we know what it's like as we turn the fan, the little switch on the fan and it gets slower and slower, or what it's like if we have a light bulb on a dimmer switch and it gets lower and lower. So even as our restless mind is wanting to go out and out, slowly we just dim it away and just keep bringing our attention, our focus, our mind, our energy, our everything right back to this point. Gently, gently, slowly, slowly, we peacefully just bring your attention and your energy back to here. And slowly you will learn to withdraw the life force from all this surrounding area. You will learn how to withdraw, even you'll feel it withdrawing in your physical body cells and coming deeper into your spine, and you'll be able to sit very still, very calmly. So even if you've been meditating for many years, don't get discouraged, don't give up. Learn how to sit still, learn how to keep meditating, learn how to meditate with God, that we talk about praying with God, that learn how to meditate with God, and learn to feel that it's His power doing this through you. You know, I've spent a lot of years doing lots of techniques, but I've come to learn that every one of those techniques is for one thing alone, and that's to learn how to love God. And each one of those techniques teaches us how to open our heart, how to open our consciousness to God's grace, so that we can learn to feel His power, so that we can learn to feel His joy and His peace on the inside, so that absolutely nothing can shake that peace. and there is a force that is trying to pull us down, that is trying to wreck our lives, don't give in to that force. That God is stronger than that force. And He's only doing it to test you. To test you, do you love me? Or do you love this world? Do you love the things of this world which will only end in misery and suffering? So learn to love God. Learn to deepen your love for God more and more, and you won't have to think of hundreds of millions of rules. You only need one rule, and that rule is in your heart. Learn to love God more deeply. So I will now open it up to questions. If we don't have any questions, and I'm seeing a little look over there, that it sounds like we don't have any questions, and that's absolutely fine with me. It's not a problem. If you want in the next few minutes, you can write them, but if not, that's okay too. Let's just keep talking about prayer. And so I've written a few things here. I just want to make sure that I have said them all. Oh, good. I want to tell you one story. You know, we used to have a monk's healing prayer list. And in the beginning, one of the monks, he did like everybody's doing these days. He advertised on Facebook in order to let people know that the monks were praying for people. And in that way, we got many people that we were praying for. And a group came and they would write to this person who was in charge of the healing list. And then, so we stopped advertising. And then for a little bit, we just got busy going to many different satsangs, and we were not as regular for praying for people. And slowly then people stopped writing in and asking for prayers. I mean, it went down. And then we thought, oh, we have to start praying for people again. And we united ourselves again, and deeply the monks were praying for people again. And then many new people, we didn't have to advertise through Facebook, that many new people from all over the world started writing in and asking for the monks to pray for them. And we deeply got to see the power of prayer. And if we became lackadaisical in our prayers, that people would stop asking for them. That when we were very focused and that we were making those prayers happen on a daily basis, on a weekly basis for many months, then all over the world this energy would gather. So it's just one more example of the subtle power of our thoughts. You know, you can learn to understand the subtle power of your thoughts, that if you just practice Hong Sa. That Master said that if you want to become a master in this lifetime, practice Hong Sa for 2 hours every day. And I know that most of us, that we have families, and that we have duties to our families, that some of us, we have to go to the office 6.5 days a week. That's ludicrous in my opinion. I tell my boss, no, I will go 6 days a week. That you need that 1 day a week to be able to take time deeply for your family and give time to God. The 5-day work week's even better for those of you who are blessed with that. Where you can have 1 day to do your chores and devote to your family, and 1 day to devote to God. But anyways, I wanted to talk about this 2 hours per day of Hong Sa. At least start trying to build yourself up to this. That I say that no matter how young you are, you should start trying to dedicate your life to God now. But there is something valid to this Indian system of the 4 ashrams of life. Of the beginning one being a stage of Brahmacharya, the second one being a stage of a householder, the third one we start to withdraw from our duties because we've built up enough money in this world that we no longer need to focus on making money, and that we can give our energy as a guidance counselor. Mainly we're focusing on meditation. And then the last years of our life should be dedicated just to meditation. But if you wait for those last years of life, you will not have gained the inner power, and you won't have gained the inner strength of God. That you need to make the effort now. But what I'm saying, there will come a time in your life where you will have the time to be able to do 2 hours of Hong Sa per day. But you need to be building yourself up now in your strength. And it's not your physical strength. But as your body gets older, not a problem if you have less physical strength. But your mind and your magnetism need to be growing stronger and stronger day by day. But the whole point I was trying to get to of all of this, in this 2 hours of Hong Sa, that if you do that, that you will learn very deeply that, this is a very interesting point, that in every day you only get a finite number of thoughts. That we're in this restless world and we think like, oh, we just have an infinite number of thoughts. It just seems uncontrollable and infinite. But if you start spending 2 hours a day practicing Hong Sa, you'll realize in that chunk of time of that 2 hours, that was a very American word, chunk of time, in that 2 hours that you only have a certain number of breaths that you're taking and a certain number of thoughts. And you'll learn that you really want to get yourself together in those 2 hours to where you can only have your mind saying Hong Sa, and not let all these crazy other thoughts come in. And when you reach that point, then you begin to realize that the other 22 hours, that those also are finite, and that you really need to be paying attention to what each one of your thoughts are throughout the day. That you will attract to yourself that which you think about. Even if it's something you deeply don't desire, like to be bitten by a mosquito. If you're just thinking, oh, I don't like those mosquitoes, oh, I hope they don't come in my room tonight, they will come in. Read that chapter in the Autobiography of a Yogi again, where Master talks about how Sri Yukteswar had two powers. One, he could put the thought in the mosquito's mind not to bite him. Now that's some true mental power. Or Sri Yukteswarji could withdraw his energy from his physical body to the point where even if a mosquito was biting him, he wouldn't feel it. That he truly had learned how to dim the power away from the five senses and take it deeper into his own self. And we too were trying to develop that power. But even Hong Sa, when you learn to concentrate here, when you learn to become a master of your own thoughts, of your own energy, Hong Sa will give you that power. So, you know, many of you listening this evening are already Kriyabans, and we think that, oh, well, I don't need to take Hong Sa that seriously. You need to take all five of the techniques seriously. And when I say that, I mean Hong Sa, Om technique, Mahamudra, Kriya, Hong Sa, Om technique, Mahamudra, Kriya, and energization exercises. That those two, they're very important. That I was talking earlier about feeling this energy withdrawing into the deep spine. That the energization exercises will give you the ability to feel that that muscle has become more alive and more vibrant with God's power. And in learning how to feel how that power goes into the muscles, you'll also learn how to feel how it withdraws and how you can withdraw it deeply back into the deep spine. The energization exercises are such a deep, deep thing that Master said, you have no idea what I have given you with these techniques. So don't let any of them slip by the wayside. Make a commitment to yourself that you will practice these techniques. And, as I was saying earlier, when you practice these techniques, do them with devotion. That I got into a phase where I was doing Mahamudra a little bit more, maybe than the average person does, and a very saintly person found out about it and said, that's all right, but make sure that you do it with devotion. And I thought, do Mahamudra with devotion? What does that mean? But then I came to realize that we need to be doing all of the techniques, feeling God's presence within us, doing them to please God, and not just doing Mahamudra as a huffing and puffing exercise. It's as you learn to get, first you will do it as a huffing and puffing exercise, and you'll learn to get a little bit more in shape and have energy flow through you, and that's okay. But then as you do that, you'll learn to feel that God's power, it is energy, and that you'll learn to feel it flowing through you. I hope that I have time to make one more point, and that is that as we learn to develop our mental power, which we've talked a lot about this evening because we were talking about prayer, you won't learn to just develop your mental power first. That the creation was made and you were made in the image and likeness of God, and that means that everything comes first from consciousness, then to mind, then to energy, then to the physical world. And so I'll end with that, but understand that that's the creation, that's how it works, and that you need to reverse that process and learn how to understand energy first. And in understanding energy and how it affects the material world, then you'll understand the deeper things of mind and consciousness. Well, friends, I've had a wonderful evening. I hope that you too have had a good time, and I look forward to next week, same time, same place. Have a wonderful week. Joy to you.